Yeah.
Usually week 13 would mark the end of the regular season. Obviously things are a little different this year. And lucky for us, we still have a lot of football left to be played. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you our week 13 predictions, our 5 biggest games going into week 13. And for some of the nation's elite teams, this weekend is huge. It is huge for some conference races, such as the Big 12 with Texas and Iowa State. It is huge for teams like Alabama and Notre Dame trying to continue to bolster their college football playoff resume and get into that Final Four by season's end. It's huge for Colorado and USC, who may win the Pac-12 South with a win on Saturday. And the same can be said for San Jose State and Boise State in the Mountain West. The winner may be clinching a spot in that championship game. So many big games to choose from this week. We settled on 5, and let's go ahead and get started up here at the top with number 15 Iowa State and number 20 Texas down in Austin. And again, remember, these rankings up here, they are the AP rankings. These are the rankings that came out Sunday afternoon. I know that the college football playoff rankings will come out later on. We're filming this well before those rankings have been released. So we're using the AP rankings on these prediction videos. Just want to get that out of the way. The Cyclones and the Longhorns, huge for the Big 12 standings here, because if Texas wins, they basically cause chaos in the Big 12. If Texas wins, Iowa State, Oklahoma, Texas, and Oklahoma State will all have 2 conference losses, assuming Oklahoma and Oklahoma State take care of business on Saturday, on this weekend. Texas wins, that's what happens. And then we've got this huge tie-breaking debacle. Iowa State beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma beat Texas. Texas beats Iowa State. It's going to be insane. And I'm going to love it. But if Iowa State wins, they practically ensure themselves a spot in the Big 12 championship game. So this is huge across both sides here, for both sides, for the conference and for both teams. We'll start with Iowa State here. They're coming off their best performance of the year. No doubt about it. Cyclones just defeated Kansas State 45-0 and outgained the Wildcats by 390 yards. You can't ask for a better performance than that, especially in like a rivalry game like that as well. Breece Hall played out of his mind. Brock Purdy, just 4 incompletions on the day. It was the best performance from Iowa State in 2020. Texas, they're going to be playing in their first game in 20 days. They have not played since November 7th. This game going to be played, of course, the day after Thanksgiving on that Friday. So the question will be, will Texas be rested or will Texas be shaky? Will they be underprepared? Were they going to be rusty because they haven't played in nearly 3 weeks? Iowa State beat Texas last year in Ames 23-21, and I would expect a very similar result this year, except I'm giving it in favor of the Longhorns. I expect it to be a very close game yet again, but I like Texas. A couple storylines I want to touch on in this game. The first is, will Breece Hall, the Iowa State running back, one of the best running backs in the country, will he hit his 9th straight game with at least 100 rushing yards? Hall already has 1,169 yards and 15 rushing touchdowns in 2020. Can he keep up that success against a Texas rushing defense that's not too bad, allowing 117.9 rushing yards per game? So yeah, they're allowing over 100, but it's not that much over 100. Can they step up and shut Breece Hall down and force Brock Purdy, who had a great game against Kansas State, but outside of that has been mediocre and inconsistent, force him to win the game through the air? You look at Texas here. They're led by Sam Ehlinger, one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. Has 2,157 total yards, 29 total touchdowns. Leads in offense, is averaging 40.4 points per game. Both teams have the offensive capability to put up some points. To me, it's going to be which defense can step up and get the job done. And in my eyes, it's going to be Chris Ash's defense and the Longhorns. The Longhorns are playing in their last home game of the year. This is going to be an emotional one. Practically senior night for Texas, senior night for Sam Ehlinger. He's not going out with a loss in his last game at home with the Longhorns. Texas wins this game. They shut down Breece Hall just enough. Brock Purdy makes just enough mistakes. My Cyclone fans out there, I hate to say it, I genuinely do, but you're going to fall in this one. I believe you're going to fall in this one, and Texas creates chaos in the Big 12 standings, something we won't be able to sort out for a few more weeks. Over in the ACC, a top 25 matchup. The AP did this on purpose, you know it. Number 2, Notre Dame, and number 25, North Carolina. It looks better being a ranked versus ranked matchup than being the number 2 team in the country versus an unranked team. This game's going to be fun, though. Also taking place the day after Thanksgiving on that Friday. This is going to be a really, really fun one. Both teams coming off a bye. Both teams are going to have their defenses tested in this one. No doubt about it. Like Iowa State, Texas, you could see a lot of points scored. And it's going to come down to which defense can get the most stops. Which defense will show up. Look at North Carolina here. They're averaging 43.1 points per game. Notre Dame is allowing 16.6 points per game. North Carolina is averaging 233.5 rushing yards per game. Notre Dame has one of the best rushing defenses in the country, allowing just 85.1 rushing yards per game. So North Carolina's offense against this Notre Dame defense. And then you've got Notre Dame's very balanced offense, averaging 228.8 passing yards per game and 233.5 rushing yards per game, going up against this mediocre at best North Carolina defense. Back in the preseason, I picked North Carolina to win this game, and I focused solely on the quarterback battle between Ian Book and Sam Howell. That was the main focus for me. And while that matchup is still going to take place, you might want to focus more on the running backs with Kyron Williams for Notre Dame, 777 yards and 10 touchdowns this year, and Javonte Williams of North Carolina, 868 yards and 15 touchdowns this year. The run games may dominate in this one, may run rampant in this one, assuming Notre Dame's rushing defense does not play as well as they have all year. The thing is, I think they do. This Notre Dame team is legit. And every week, for about the past 3 weeks, Notre Dame fans have had to hear they're not good enough, they're going to slip up. Not many people gave them a chance against Clemson, despite the game being in South Bend, despite Clemson being without Trevor Lawrence. Notre Dame won that in overtime. Then they went to Boston College, and they said, Boston College is pretty good this year. They're going to pull off the upset in Chestnut Hill. It's a letdown game for the Fighting Irish, and Notre Dame won that game convincingly. And now they will travel to Chapel Hill to take on North Carolina, a team that's defense has been their downfall this year, and Notre Dame is going to exploit those defensive weaknesses, and they will show again that they are a top 4 team in the country. Notre Dame's legit. They're for real. The game's close. A lot of points are scored, but the Fighting Irish win it. I changed my prediction. We're going with the Irish. Iron Bowl. Down in the SEC, you can't have a prediction video, and you can't talk what is kind of rivalry week now. I know it's not fully and officially rivalry week, but in a way it is. You can't have it without the Iron Bowl. Number 22, Auburn. Number 1, Alabama. The 85th Iron Bowl. 85th Iron Bowl. How about that? And if it's anything like the Iron Bowl we had last year, we're going to be in for a treat. Because last year at Auburn, the Tigers won 48-45. I think we all remember how this one played out. Alabama was starting a guy named Mac Jones. Tua Tagovailoa went down. Mac Jones had to start the Iron Bowl. Their playoff hopes, were decided against Auburn. If they win, they still have hope. If they lose, they're out. And the Tide lost by 3 points, thanks to 2 pick sixes thrown by Mac Jones and that shanked field goal late in the fourth quarter. The home team, though, has won the last 4 meetings in the Iron Bowl. So that was Auburn's win last year. Alabama won in Tuscaloosa the year prior. And you go back 4 years, the home team has won 4 in a row. But I mentioned that guy named Mac Jones, who actually didn't play all that bad outside of the interceptions last year. Well, he's back. He's here with Alabama this year. And he's playing lights-out football. So much that he's a legitimate Heisman contender in 2020. He's thrown for 2,426 yards, 18 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. That's it. Jones is playing unreal football. And we might be lucky here pretty soon to see him face off against Kyle Trask, the other great SEC quarterback in 2020. Alabama, though, outside of him, they've got a guy named Najee Harris, 797 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns this year. Mac Jones has his top wide receiver in Devontae Smith, 903 yards, 10 touchdowns this year. The Crimson Tide are averaging 49.4 points per game, and they're allowing just 11 points per game over their last 4. Everybody criticized Nick Saban and this defense after that bad performance against Ole Miss where they allowed 48 points. They've allowed 11 points per game since that game. Auburn, on the other hand, the Tigers, they've won 3 straight. Beat Tennessee, they beat LSU. They're okay. But my question is, do they have the horses to hang in this game? Can their defense hold against Alabama, and can Bo Nix and Auburn play in what could be another possible shootout, or play in a game where Alabama certainly is going to put up some points? They were able to do it last year, but keep in mind, 14 of their points came off pick sixes, came from their defense. And I do not have faith in Bo Nix on the road to go in here, exploit an ever-improving Alabama defense, and to continue to match Mac Jones step for step, especially if Auburn is without their star running back in Tank Bigsby, who got beat up and injured in last week's win against Tennessee. Alabama will win this game at home in Tuscaloosa. They will continue to show why they're the number 1 team in the country. Auburn more than likely will fall outside of the top 25 and will lose the 85th Iron Bowl. Will not be nearly as close as it was last year. Colorado at number 19 USC. We kind of talked about it at the beginning of the video. We're going to break it down in deeper analysis now. Both of these teams are undefeated in the Pac-12. Now, you can take that with a grain of salt. USC is 3-0. Colorado is 2-0. So we don't have a very large sample size going into this week and going into this matchup. But when you look at the Pac-12 South as a whole, this game could very well determine who wins that division and maybe has the liberty and the opportunity to play Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. Colorado, USC. The Buffaloes have never defeated the Trojans. Colorado has never defeated USC. They're 0-14 all-time against USC. They've come close. They lost by 4 last year, 35-31. Lost by 14 in 2017. Lost by 4 in 2016. Lost by 3 in 2015. So in recent years, about the past 5 years, they've been close. Just haven't been able to get the job done. And if this game was in Boulder, I might lean towards the upset. But it's at the Coliseum, and I'm going with the Trojans. Look at this, guys. USC, the key number you have to look at here is Kedon Slovis in this passing game. Slovis has 970 yards, 5 touchdowns, and just 2 interceptions in their first 3 games. Last week's game against Utah was very impressive, and that game showed the type of team that USC is capable of being. They struggled against Arizona State. They struggled against Arizona. The win over Utah by 16 points in Salt Lake City showed this type of team that we knew they would be, the type of team that could contend for a Pac-12 title. The Trojans are averaging 323.3 passing yards per game. That's to be expected when Graham Harrell's your offensive coordinator. The problem is Colorado's defense is abysmal. And you'll ask, well, how? They're 2-0. They're 2-0 because their offense is averaging 258 passing yards a game and 220.5 rushing yards per game. They're very balanced. And I give a lot of credit to Carl Durrell for the start that he's had in Boulder, and Sam Neuer, the quarterback, for the job that he's done so far, taking over for Steven Montez. But you look at Colorado's defense. They're allowing 37 points per game through those 2 games, and they're allowing 315 passing yards per game. Their secondary is non-existent. It's just not there. And Kedon Slovis, maybe the best quarterback in the Pac-12, at least one of them, with his core of wide receivers at home, now playing in their 4th game, I don't see any way how USC loses this game. I don't see any way how Colorado comes on the road and wins this game. Colorado, they took down Stanford. They took down UCLA. Those were the 2 teams that put up ridiculous offensive stats against them. If that's the case, USC is going to put up maybe the worst stats Colorado's ever seen this season. Worst as in bad defensive performance. USC rolls in this one. They take care of Colorado, and in doing so, should capture the Pac-12 South. And then finally, our last game probably caught you off guard when you saw it up here. Caught me off guard when I was doing some research. Never in a million years did I expect to have San Jose State on our big board. I don't care if they're playing the top-ranked team in the country. Never thought that I would have San Jose State up here on the big board. But that's the type of year that we're having. That's the type of season that 2020 has been. The Spartans, San Jose State, Brent Brennan's squad, they're undefeated. They're 4-0. and they're facing Boise State, who only has one loss out of conference to BYU. Well, the winner of this game, since both are undefeated in conference play, the winner of this game might solidify themselves a spot in the Mountain West Championship game. Remember, the Mountain West not doing divisions this year. They're not doing divisions this year. There's only 3 undefeated teams within the conference, at least conference play. It's these two and Nevada, who's 5-0. Let's look at San Jose State real quick. They went 2-11 in 2017. They went 1-11 in 2018. They went 5-7 last year, including a road win at Arkansas, and now they're 4-0. Credit to the Spartans administration for sticking with Brent Brennan because he's proving that he's the right man for the job. They're 4-0, haven't been to a bowl game since 2015. They're certainly going to go to one now, but they have their eyes set on a Mountain West title. And you might ask, how are they doing it? Well, the irony is they beat Arkansas last year. Arkansas's quarterback at the time was Nick Starkel, who, if I'm not mistaken, threw 5 interceptions in that game. Well, now Nick Starkel is San Jose State's quarterback. It's funny how things come full circle. Nick Starkel, 980 yards, 9 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. San Jose State, they're not electric, they're not flashy, but they're efficient. They're efficient. They're averaging 29.3 points per game and 292.5 passing yards per game. One of the best passing attacks in the Mountain West Conference. Boise State, on the other hand, they're averaging 40 points per game, led by Hank Bachmeier, who's been battling some injuries this year, but Bachmeier playing extremely well, and a lot of it is in credit to his top wide receiver, Khalil Shakir, 529 yards and 6 touchdowns. That includes 130 yards and 2 touchdowns last week against Hawaii, a game Boise State won by 8. So you look at this, 2 great quarterbacks, 2 fairly solid offenses, and really it's a matter of Boise State's offense, they certainly have the edge, versus San Jose State's defense, where they, in fact, own the edge. Which one is going to give here? And to me, it's San Jose State's defense. I know the Spartans have won every game by at least 11 points. It's extremely, extremely impressive. But we're talking about Boise State at the Smurf turf here. And I know what you're going to say. They had BYU on the Smurf turf, and they got blown out. San Jose State's not BYU. And Boise State's not battling quarterback issues like they did against the Cougars. I really feel like Brian Harson's squad is starting to hit their stride. They're going to start making their run in their quest for another Mountain West title. They're a perennial group of 5 team that contends for those New Year's 6 bowl spots. They're not going to do it this year, so the consolation is winning the Mountain West. They can't do it without a win on Saturday, and I believe they do it just that. In a game that's very close. Last year, the year before, never would have expected San Jose State to be able to hang with the Broncos. This year, you can. But the Broncos still ultimately get the win. And in doing so, might clinch themselves a spot in the championship game. Still a lot of games to go. This is one of the tougher tests that the Broncos are going to get out of the way. So, man, a lot to cover here, guys. Week 13 going to be a heck of a week. Kind of rivalry week, as we mentioned. You got the Iron Bowl. Got a couple rivalries taking place in the SEC. I believe the Egg Bowl is this week. Mike Leach, Lane Kiffin. 2 disappointing teams, but 2 very fun coaches. That's going to be some must-see football. So, big games coming your way on Saturday. Big games for the playoff races. Big games for conference races. The season, as it may be nearing an end, as we only have a couple of weeks left in this regular season, in a way it is heating up. We are starting to see what these teams are truly made of, and we are starting to see how the postseason will begin to take shape. How we'll start to see these conference championship matchups start to form. These bowl matchups start to form. And the playoff format and the playoff teams start to form as well. And a lot of that we're going to get some clarity on this weekend. So don't miss it. It's going to be great. Football starts early this week, carries us all the way through Thanksgiving. We've got some on Thanksgiving. We've got some the day after. All day Saturday is going to be a glorious weekend of football, a glorious week period of football, and you don't want to miss it. And, of course, we'll have you covered with it every step of the way. So, guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. Say that every time, but it's so, so important. Make sure to share our videos. It helps us out in growing and continuing to bring you some of the best college football analysis in the country. So share our videos. Check out everything down in that description below. Sign up for our newsletter. Sign up for our expert picks. Use our Bet Now promo code to bet on these games. We're going to have our expert picks and our spread picks for these games out on our website. tomorrow, Wednesday afternoon, so make sure to check that out. And of course, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching yet again, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.